Hello, my name is Luba Shul, and today I'm going to be talking about the steps you need to take to make the bone broth right and why you might be doing it wrong. Bone broth has a lot of healing properties, from repairing your skin and nails and hair to healing digestive issues, to providing nutrients. However, I noticed that a lot of recipes are calling for actions that might be not beneficial for you. So if you are consuming bone broth on a regular basis for your health, please watch this video. The reason I decided to make this video is that I've noticed that the section in the supermarket where they used to sell chicken stock and just bouillon cubes just balloon from like a few cardboard boxes to the whole aisle of different stocks and broths and supplements. So and then I didn't even know that this trend was going on. However, in my family, especially on my mother's side, who comes from a lineage of generational farmers, we've been using and consuming bone broth for generations, for centuries. My mom comes from a village where they grew all their own food and they raised their livestock, so bone broth was a staple in their diet. They needed to maximize their food because although they didn't have limitations in it, but it took a lot of work to raise all the fruits and vegetables and to raise all the chickens and cows and sheep and pigs and whatever else they had. So they needed to maximize their meals to the maximum. So they mostly did bone broth based meals such as soups, porridges, casseroles and such. And I'm continuing this tradition. I make bone broth based soup every week. And sometimes I make casserole, sometimes I make grits and other stuff. My favorite is chicken bone broth, but in my family we did everything. And these tips apply to all kinds of bone broths. So we're gonna start with, you need to choose the right quality of bones and meat on the bones, because we like to use bones that still have some tissues on it. Muscle, joints, ligaments and skin. So the best bones are gonna be chicken feet, necks, backs, wings and shoulders. So don't just buy bare bones, because you want these nutrients and collagens and minerals coming out of the whole of other parts too, not just out of the bone. Then the next thing is to choose organic and possibly pasture-raised bones. However, it's very hard. For example, where I live, sometimes they have organic bones, sometimes they don't have, and they have several tiers of the meat quality. They have conventional, then they have the next step is when they don't feed the stock antibiotics, GMOs, and they don't give them hormones. Then the next level is organic. Then the next level is organic, pasture-raised, and natural fed bones. However, I almost never can find all the way. So most of the time I use just organic, but sometimes I have to buy the natural ones that are not, they don't have antibiotics, GMOs, and etc., but yet they're not organic. So the best quality bones is the best outcome, basically. Next, I think what people are doing wrong is they're cooking their bones for way too long. Bones tend to accumulate, even in organic stock, things like lead, mercury, toxins, pollutants, residues of vaccines, even in organic chickens and cows and other animals, because no matter how we tried, for example, the cows might graze near highway or the chickens might live in a lead painted barn, or all the animals need to be administered vaccines and medications, and all of this accumulates in the bones. So boiling them for far too long, the longer you boil, the more of the substances get released into these bones, and they become very heavy for your liver to process, for your kidneys to flush out. They also get into your bones, so maybe you won't notice the effect right away, and you will notice the positive effects of bone broth first, like stronger hair and nails, but over time it will become too much of a burden on your liver and kidneys and other organs. So I recommend to boil your bones for beef and red meat based animals. I recommend under 6 hours, for chicken under 4 hours, and for fish under 2 hours. And that's why you want the bones with the meat on them, because you're extracting collagens and minerals and proteins not only from the bone, where all the bad stuff is stored, but also from the cleaner tissues too. So next thing I would say is that for the same reason, people want to extract the maximum stuff from the bone, so they add acidic stuff and lots of salt to their broths. I read recipes where they add vinegar, limes, lemons, sometimes even wine, and peppers, tomatoes, you name it. All of these are acidic in nature, so they help to extract more stuff from the bones, including the bad stuff, but you want to keep the bad stuff under the safe levels. Unfortunately, it's unavoidable when you're choosing to consume bone broth to get some of the stuff, but you want to keep it safe. The same salt has the same effect. It helps extract stuff from the bones. So the next thing I want to talk about is that putting your other non-acidic vegetables way too early. Now, if the recipe calls for it and you're doing some fancy culinary concoctions, that's alright. Put your vegetables right when you want. But if you're doing and consuming regularly bone broth, I would recommend to put your vegetables in the last half hours and herbs in the last 10 minutes. I personally, when I choose to put vegetables in the broth, I usually use carrots, celery, and parsley. So half an hour before the broth is ready, I put carrots and celery, and I put a whole bunch of parsley right the 10 minutes before the broth is done. And but in the beginning of making the broth, I put some bay leaf, some peppercorn, and sometimes some cardamom, because those are harder spices. They don't disintegrate in the water. And the reason why I don't want you to put your vegetables way too early, because number one, all the nutrients are going to be destroyed after hours of boiling. Number two, so when we are cooking stuff for way too long, the natural MSGs start to form. And it doesn't matter what you cook. You can cook meat, bones, vegetables, grains. When the food gets to the point of browning, that's when MSGs are starting forming. And MSGs are responsible for some headaches, migraines, stomach upsets, nausea, and you just don't want them in your system. So the more stuff you have in your broth and for the longer time, then the more MSGs are forming, and you don't want that. So in the beginning of the boiling, I just put water, bones, some bay leaf and peppercorn, and maybe one or two other hard spices that are not going to disintegrate there. And the general rule of thumb with any cooking, not only with the broths, is to cook it till it starts being golden, not till it starts being brown. So I know the brown food tastes great, like we all like grilled stuff and we all like rotisserie chicken or we like to brown our meats, and we'll, you know, some of you might like steak or shrimp, or, and this flavor, this kind of like this meaty rich flavor that comes from grilling, that comes from sauteing too much, or cooking vegetables in a wok, then this is when the MSGs are forming, and that's why it gives you such a great taste. And it can happen in the boiling water too, just we don't notice it in the water because the color is flashing in the water. But it is happening, and it can be seen at the end of the product. The next mistake you might be making is not alternating between your cooking methods. Unfortunately, there is no 100% safe cooking method for the bone broth, because different materials can leach different stuff into your bone broth. So alternating and keeping those substances under the safe levels is the best bet. I have 4 different methods of cooking my bone broth. I'm actually making a fresh batch of chicken bone broth right now in my Instant Pot, and I'm gonna link the video below with detailed instructions. And the other methods I have, sometimes when I make bone broth to use in a casserole or grits, I make it in a smaller enamel cast iron pot. So when I just make it, you know, like this, and I add stuff later and I cook with it, and it's the right size. Then if I'm making just to drink, for drinking, I either use my Instant Pot or I use the crock pot for it. And I also have a green pan pot that I use for when I make soups with bone broth. So right now I actually have soup in my green pan, so I'm not gonna show it to you because it's kind of, you know, a little messy, but so this brings me to 4 different methods. So very short information why it might be not good to make it in the same pot over and over again. Because for example, Instant Pot made out of the stainless steel, and it has some silicone elements in it. So stainless steel can leach chromium, cadmium, nickel and iron in our food after a lot of boiling. It also has like a silicone ring on it, so that can leach a little tiny round plastic particles in it. Now a lot of enamel cast iron has lead in the glazing, in the inside glazing of the pot. But of course in the United States it's all under the safe level, unless, and if it's not, it will say California Residence Proposition 54 or whatever, I don't remember the article, if it's more than the safe level. But imagine if you're cooking your bone broth only in this, then it will be leaching and you'll be consuming then more than the safe levels. The same for the crock pot. It also has glazing, so all the glazing has a little bit of lead naturally. If the retailer or a salesperson is going to tell you otherwise, don't trust. One time I went to Williams in Sonoma and I was talking to the lady and I was like, well, I'm trying to purchase some cookware that is high quality and has a little bit less of this harmful compound. And she was all indignant, and I was like, we don't have any lead in our cookware. I'm like, okay, calm down, you know. Because there was independent studies and independent people testing all kinds of cookware, and there is something leaching in your food in any kind of cookware. So what else they have? So they have a company called Green Pan that it came under a lot of criticism, but I'm happy with it. So it might be leaching some other chemicals that we don't even know into the soup, but at least I'll alternate it. And then they also have regular stainless steel pots. They have blends, like the stainless steel blended with copper, blended with aluminum. It has several layers, but again, if you keep your pot going for 6 hours straight, those particles are gonna start penetrating and leaching a little bit in your food. So you just want to vary your methods of cooking and just get as least amount of chemicals in your food. And that's why we need not to cook it for that long. Like they want you to cook chicken for 12 hours, beef for 24 hours. Yes, there's a lot of collagen will come out, but imagine how much, you know, lead and chromium, cadmium, nickel, some other chemicals that we don't even know, copper, aluminum. The only thing I don't recommend completely cooking your bone broth in is that if you have some non-stick pad and it started flaking, so definitely don't, just throw away that pot. Don't even donate it, just throw it away because it's just dangerous. If you have some old Tefals, because those are already proven carcinogenic substances in them. So if your Tefal is, I think, older than 10 years, just again, just throw it away, just invest into something else. And I don't recommend cooking on pure copper and pure aluminum because those are highly toxic. Copper is good to cook if you saute something really quickly, and aluminum too, especially because meat is already really acidic by itself, and this acidity from the meat is gonna just extract all kinds of substances, and it's gonna leach into your bone broth, and we don't want that. So here I have the bone broth that I made myself, my last batch, and you see the color, it's a very light golden, semi-transparent, and I recommend that you practice to make it the same. And so the next mistake that you might be making is that buying a commercial made bone broth. Because let's look for comparison. I bought this bone broth in my local supermarket, and I'm not gonna show the brand because I bought an inexpensive one, but they all look the same. So this is chicken bone broth, and also this is chicken bone broth. You see the difference in color, and I don't even know what the hell is that. It's probably like some disintegrated bone. But you see, the browning has occurred here. That means they were cooking it too long, so there might be other substances in there. You know, they probably, of course, it's a commercial kitchen, so they're not gonna alternate the methods of cooking. They're gonna get the maximum out of those bones. They're gonna just keep those pots going and going for hours and hours. So imagine how much stuff can leach in your bone broth. And the bones, you actually can you can boil them over and over and over and over again, and the broth will keep producing, and the bones are going to be disintegrating. First, all the meats is going to be gone, joints, skin, and but you don't want to disintegrate the bone, because once you disintegrate the bone, everything that was in the bone is going to be in your bone broth. So I'm going to pour it right here. It's mixing. Okay. So you see, this is, I'm not even gonna try this one because I'm afraid. Who knows what's in there. Definitely there's some disintegrated bones in there, and with them lead and mercury and carcinogenic substances and the residues of antibiotics, vaccines, medications, everything that can accumulate in an animal for its lifetime. I'm sure it's in there. So if you wanna invest in your health by drinking bone broth, please invest in the right bone broth. Make it yourself. Just follow the guidelines, and yeah, I think that's all for the day. I think we're gonna end on this positive note. Well, thank you for watching. Bye.